Welcome to Soberly Speaking. I'm Julia Rangiheuia.
Hi guys, my name is Natasha. I'm 24 years old and I am a recovering addict.
It was just a few days ago when I stumbled upon that video on TikTok. A young girl stared back at me, sharing how her chronic illness had led to an accidental addiction. After giving birth to her daughter, Natasha was prescribed Oxy to manage the debilitating symptoms of endometriosis, a condition that had been dormant all her life until she gave birth. In this episode, Tash shares her powerful story, begging her street dealer to stop answering her calls, pleading with doctors to take her pain seriously, and most importantly, seeking her family's help to get into detox. That decision ultimately saved her life. I hope you love this chat with Natasha. Tash, you started taking drugs like myself when you were about 15, which is quite young. Let's start at that point in your life.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like?
Very traumatic. I grew up in a very abusive household. My dad, he came here from Macedonia when he was quite young. So he had the very strict WOG parents. So it was very much learnt behaviour, unfortunately. But it's something that I can realise now as I get older and become a mum myself, that he was just trying to do the best with what he knew and what he had. And like back then they didn't have, all the services and awareness that we have now about, DV and domestic violence and things like that, and family violence and resources to get help. So yeah, it wasn't a great childhood. Most of my memories are just of being abused, physically, mentally, emotionally, as I got older, financially as well. Very much power, wanting to just take, control of anything that I did. And anything that I wanted to do, it was not good enough, So I became a people pleaser very fast because of that, which led me down to, when I was 15, I started with weed. And again, that was just to try and impress my friends, because that time, that's when they started experimenting. And I thought, well, if I don't do it, they're not going to like me anymore. And I'm not going to be cool. And it led to, more and more party drugs. And
So you were how old when you took your first ecstasy pill? Because there was a story behind that and I loved reading it. You said that you had this fear that you wouldn't be invited to someone's house or a party.
Yeah, I love that you're asking about this part of my life. So I remember I was I think I just turned 16. It's literally probably like a week before. And my best friend at the time was dating somebody who was 20, so they were 4 years older than us. And I liked his best friend. And we were on the way to a party, and my friend was my best friend in the back seat, and then another friend of mine. And they had taken ecstasy multiple times. This was my first time, and at that time, I had struggled really deeply because of my childhood with panic attacks, and I had a panic disorder. So I thought, fuck, if I take one of these, I'm gonna panic. And I remember I was like, fuck it, and I took one, and I just swallowed it, and I said, okay, you know what, you've done it now, just try and enjoy it. But it was never because I wanted to do it. It was because I wanted to go to that party and hang out with that guy that I liked. And I ended up dating him for about 3 years. And that's when I was experimenting with more drugs as well, because then I was in an older crowd. I was a 16-year-old hanging out with, 25-year-olds, like 26-year-olds even. And I felt like I had to keep up with them. I had to show them that I wasn't just some little 16-year-old. I was an adult.
And isn't it so wild looking back as we have now matured and we are now adults, you yourself a mother, how creepy that behaviour was and how unacceptable that behaviour was?
It makes me sick to my stomach. There were so many times that I was taken advantage of because of my age and because of the drugs they were giving me. I didn't know what I was doing with them. So they would, give me my dose, I guess, as you say. Take advantage of me because of how you know, how affected I was by the drugs. And yeah, not one time did I ever take them for fun or for myself because I wanted to, purely just because I wanted to be liked.
Tash, what I loved about your story, I think everyone listening is going to go, oh my God, that was me too. You said, looking back, I have always been addicted to something throughout my
Mm,
life.
yeah.
How did those addictions play out towards your late teens, early 20s? I'm just trying to get the timeline right.
Yeah. Yeah. So about 18, 19 was when I was like, okay, I'm sick of these party drugs. Like I'm sick of it. So I ended up moving away from my town because pretty much every one of my friends had either moved away or they had unfortunately become addicted to ice. So I didn't want to be around that anymore. So I moved into the city and I got my own apartment and yeah, I started doing OnlyFans. So I had a lot of money coming through and I was living my life. I was drinking every night. I would wake up and then do my work. It's like from 10 a.m. to I think it was 6, I would work. And then as soon as that clock would hit 6, I would already have a bev ready to go in my hand. And I'd be doing that. And then cocaine as well, a lot of cocaine with alcohol.
How easy was it for you to spend your new earnings? I can imagine, like you said, new apartment, new paycheck, and getting money a lot.
Yeah.
How easy was that for you to just go, oh, I'm just going to buy an 8 ball right now?
Literally pick up my phone and grab it. Couldn't even notice it in my bank account that it was gone. I was also gambling a lot when I was living there as well, and for some reason I never lost. I was always winning at the pokies. So
What the
it
hell?
was that as well. It was like at the time I thought, holy fuck, like I'm living my best life. Like I've got this money. I've got, I've got this friend that like, me and this girl were very close at the time as well. And she was living in the city. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm literally living my best life. Like I'm in an apartment, I'm 19, I'm making all this money, like going out every night. Like literally it was work, alcohol, dinners, coke, get pokies, and then go to bed at like, I don't know, 4 a.m., wake up at 8 and start it all over again pretty much every single night. And I lived there for about a year.
And when you are that young doing that stuff, you think, oh my God, I am living to the fullest. Everyone
Oh,
wants to be me. This is how
yeah.
life is supposed to be. You don't
Yeah.
think this is the start of my addiction. You don't
Yeah.
think that. So
Not
what
at
happens after that, Tash?
So I met the father of my child, and we became very serious very quickly. And then he lived with me in the apartment, I think for like the last 4 months before I moved out. And that's when I decided, okay, I need to relax on the party girl a little bit. I've always wanted to be a young mum. And when me and the father of my child fell in love about a year into the relationship, we decided that we are going to move closer back to home, like where our families were situated, and sort of die down on it a little bit and then hopefully have a baby. So that's when I discovered Ricodine. So Ricodine and Panadine fought. So I was in like my chiller, everyone thought I'd sort of retired from the whole chill, partying. It was when COVID had hit as well. So I wasn't going out, I couldn't go out and, do coke anymore. It was laying on the couch and yeah, I had slowly started an addiction with Ricodine. That was probably the worst one. And, I would get my Panadine thoughts here and there from the doctor, but because Ricodine, you could go to the chemist and give your ID and get it so easily. I started with that, and that's when I realized I liked the downers a lot more than I enjoyed the uppers. And yeah, even since then, that's when I haven't done ecstasy or anything like that since then. That's when the downers kicked in, and that's when I really started struggling with addiction. Now that I look back on it, that was the point of addiction right there and then. But I didn't, because no one knew at all except, the father of my child, and he didn't really know the extent I was doing it either, like because he'd be at work all day and I worked from home. Started there.
Okay, I have so many questions. What is the pipeline from coke and alcohol to Ricodine or downers? Like, because that's not the average I don't really hear of people going, oh, I'm going to do that now. Like, what was it introduced to you at a party? Was it your partner? How was this introduced to you?
So when I was, I want to say about 10, I started getting really bad migraines. So my mum actually gave me my first Panadine Fort. Obviously at the time it was not like it wasn't in ill intent or anything like that, but that's how I knew about them. And then when my panic attack started when I was 13, 14 as well, she also had Mersendol, and they were pretty much the same as Panadine Fort. It just has an extra ingredient in it that can make you calm. It has a calmative effect in it as well. So when I would have these panic attacks, and because we didn't know what they were at the time either, she started to give me those as well, because I would be in a state of just absolute mess. And I was a kid. I didn't know what was going on. She didn't know what was going on. So that's how I figured out what Panadine Fort was. And I remember liking the feeling when I was younger. And yeah, that's how I sort of discovered it. It was, I knew that my mum took it for her migraines.
Now, your partner, you just said, wasn't across how bad things were. Were you
Yeah.
taking it as soon as he left and then it started to kind of wear off? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, so as soon as he would go to work around 5 a.m. and I wouldn't wake up until at 8. But as soon as I woke up, I would pop 2 or 3 of actually no, I'd always start with 4. I wasn't taking them as heavy as Oxy, but yeah, I was taking 4. And then as it would go down, I would take 2 every couple of hours to keep the high there. And then when he'd get home from work, he'd notice sometimes you've gone through a packet of 20 already, in a day, that's so bad for your stomach. The Panadol in it is the paracetamol in it is going to literally fuck up your liver. Don't do that. So then I moved on to just Ricodine pretty much. So I stopped doing the tablets because I knew there wasn't Panadol in the Ricodine. And they call it lean, and you're meant to mix it with Sprite. But I just drank it straight out of the bottle, and I would just scull the whole bottle.
Okay.
I didn't ever even think that was an issue ever until I went to Detox and realized that the downer addiction and the link to the Oxy and things like that, it started back then.
And when did you fall pregnant with Bub?
It was in August 2021. Yeah, I have to remember. August 2021 is when I fell pregnant. And about 2 months before that, because I knew I wanted a baby as well, I was consciously not tapering myself, because I wasn't at the point where I felt withdrawals or anything when I didn't take those, but I tried to stop taking those. And I also got off my antidepressants and also my anti-anxieties and everything as soon as I found out I was pregnant. So, yeah.
You've just found out you're about to have a baby, and then you've wiped yourself of everything you've been depending on for months, if not years. How was your mental health?
It was awful. Pregnancy was the worst. I can't say the worst time now because I've experienced worse, but at the time it was the worst thing I'd experienced. I had hyperephysis gravidarum, which is when you're extremely sick. So I was vomiting up to 40 times a day until I was 20 something weeks pregnant. I'd vomit up blood. I'd be in the hospital because I couldn't eat. I didn't eat for a good, I would say 12 to 14 weeks. So I'd go in hospital and get the drip, and I was just so sick that that's all I could be. Everything else sort of faded away from anything, and I didn't think of my past or anything. It was just focusing on trying to get better and trying to eat and trying to just keep water down for my baby. But I would have mental breakdowns where I was screaming, ripping my hair out, and my partner at the time was just holding me, and I was like, I can't do this. I even considered abortion because I was just so sick. But we wanted my baby so bad, we wanted her so bad that I obviously could not go through with that. So it was just a matter of just day by day at that time. And when I hit 30 weeks pregnant, my panic attacks started again, and they came in full force. I got to the point where when my partner would leave for work at 5 a.m. and I would hear the door shut, instant panic. Like I couldn't be alone. So my mum would have to come she would drive an hour to me. She'd wake up every day at 4 a.m. just to get to me at 5 because we lived about an hour away from each other, and hang out with me every single day until I gave birth to Bubs.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, and then she'd leave around 5 o'clock when my partner would get home.
Was it based around the birth? Was it based around, oh my God, is my baby going to survive? Or was it you just can't explain them?
I still don't know to this day what triggered them, what happened. It was I never had a thought. It was just I couldn't be alone. I was so scared of being alone, and I still don't understand why. I tried to unpack it with a psychologist, and I just couldn't. Yeah, I could never understand. I think it was just a mix of, honestly, now looking back on it, all of everything I went through, and I guess the fear of failing as well as a mum was there because of the childhood that I had.
Yeah.
Losing friends, isolated. I was 20 when I fell pregnant, 21 when I gave birth. So all my friends were out partying and I was at home, and I also gained a lot of, like, I was 80 kilos at my heaviest when I was pregnant. So I felt very insecure as well. I didn't want to leave the house. So I really, really isolated myself. And then the panic attacks on top of it, I felt like the most worthless I've ever felt in my life. I felt awful. I hated it. I hated every day. I hated waking up. It was so awful.
You go on to give birth to your beautiful daughter. What were
Yeah.
those first days of having a newborn like?
The best. The best. I'm gonna start crying. The best. I wouldn't be here without her. She's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Um, yeah, I had a C-section. I planned a C-section because of all the panic attacks and stuff. I needed to know, when I was going to give birth. And so I was like 40 weeks and I think 5 days when I gave birth, and she was huge as well. So they even said, like, you would not have been able to push that baby out anyway. Like, you would have probably had a emergency C-section.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was very in tune with my body by planning the C-section. But that's when endone was introduced to me.
Where do we start with this, endo? How do you get onto it?
So after I gave birth and healing from my C-section, about 3 months postpartum, I was in a lot of pain still, and I didn't know why. So I kept going back to the doctor, and at the time I still had, I had a smaller audience, but I had an audience on Instagram, and I started asking my followers, who had a C-section, these symptoms, and a bunch of women came to me and said, like, endometriosis, like, have you heard of that? It can get triggered by a C-section, which I had no idea about. And so that's when me and my doctor started investigating in endometriosis, and that was a very hard, long road. But that's when endone was prescribed to me, and I was told to take that as soon as I felt the pain, just take that, and daily prescribed endone.
And they didn't know about your past, obviously.
No. And honestly, I didn't either. Like, I knew that I just thought I was young and dumb and just, was experimenting. And yeah, I didn't even have any inkling. And they said, you can become addicted, so just be careful. And to that day, like to this day, I just wish they painted a picture out for me of, okay, but what does that look like for me? Like, what does being addicted look like? I have seen, people be addicted to things. I lost my first boyfriend, and I broke up, the one I was, explaining before, that was at the parties and things like that, because he unfortunately fell addicted to ice. So I've watched it so close, and it has shattered parts of my life. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to be an addict. There's no way I'd be addicted. So, and I've just gone through the worst time in my life. I've got my beautiful baby. This is life. This is me living my best life. Why would I become an addict now? Like, there's no way.
Tash, you are speaking on exactly why this podcast exists, is what does an addict look like to you? It's breaking down that stereotype of being told, oh, you could get addicted. It's like, well, I don't do meth, doctor.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you crazy person. Yeah. I have a job and I have a child. I'm not going to be an addict. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Preach, 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 preach.
Literally. Yeah, it makes me angry thinking about that. Like, that stupid little sticker on a prescription isn't going to stop somebody getting addicted. if they enjoy the feeling, they're enjoying the feeling. So if they're telling you that, pick up on it, GP. It just makes me angry, thinking about that now.
And you hear of so many new mothers and so many households. Like, I honestly think new mums are the number one people who write into me about how they got addicted to something that was prescribed to them. It's really sad. Yeah, it's really
And
sad.
that is why I want to talk about my story, because I felt like I was the only person going through this. I felt crazy. I felt so much shame. The shame still eats me alive. I feel like even now sharing my story, there's a bit of what's the word when you share something and you feel like, in the plate. What is I said it today, something syndrome.
Oh, imposter.
Yes, yes. So I feel a lot of imposter syndrome when I talk about this, but it's because I feel like I'm the only person that went through it. But it's like, no, I have to remind myself there is so many people with similar stories, and whether they pick up and resonate with just parts of my story, at least I'm making someone feel less alone.
And it's good, Tash. The reason why you feel like you're the only person who's gone through it is because you haven't seen enough representation of it, which is exactly why you're here with me today. So you get prescribed endo. Hey, I just want to ask something actually. Did your endometriosis, was it always in you and it lay dormant until your C-section?
Yes, that's what they told me. And because we went to my history of like my period and stuff, and I always had painful periods. I was on the pill by 15. And my mum as well, she has endometriosis. She has so many issues down there. She had precancerous cells and fibroids and a bunch of that. So they are very confident that it just lay dormant in my system until the C-section scar tissue and stuff triggered it all to manifest into stage 4 endometriosis, which is the worst stage you can have. And yeah, I had 2 procedures done. And the first one was 3. I still forget. But the first gyno that I had and the surgery that she had done, it failed. So she had only said that it was stage 2 and that she found some, but it wasn't much. And that she put the Mirena in and said I should be pain-free. And that was it. So, and she refused to do another surgery on me until 12 months after my first one. So that was my 12 months of I'm in excruciating pain, and I was in excruciating pain. Just given birth. I'm a new mum, isolated, lonely. These panic attacks had slowly started going away, and only because I was taking the endone or oxy. And yeah, and because it started making me feel better, it also helped me lose weight, the pregnancy weight, and that was something I was super, super insecure of. Stop the panic attack, stop the pain. I was losing weight. I was like, where is this in my whole life? And it made me feel amazing. Like it was like Panadine 4, but times a million. It was so much better. So yeah, that's how the oxy came into my life. And because my family knew I couldn't have surgery for another 12 months and I was in this much pain, it was in my excuse, and sort of I was able to hide the fact that I was actually loving the way it made me feel and that I was truly addicted to it.
Is the way that you parented, did you like it when you were on the oxy because you were pain-free? You actually thought that you were a better mother by being so drugged up?
Yeah. So I was able to take her to the park. I was able to go on walks. I was able to do my mum meets. Like I was able to catch up with like friends and get coffee. Like I was able to do everything that was taken away from me because of my disability. Everything. And yeah, no anxiety on top of it. I was fucking winning. Like, and that was the hard thing as well, was the fact that although it was, it wasn't, now I look back on it, I hated that happened to me, but I would have been just, so I would say the first 8 months, I would have just been laying on the couch doing nothing, not being able to walk or move or do anything for my daughter. Like I wouldn't have been able to even make a bottle for her. Like I don't know what would have happened. I would have had to have my mum probably live with me and help me because I was so disabled at that time. But then I did get to the point towards the end of my addiction, before I went to detox. The amount that I was taking, it actually was doing the same thing. I actually was just on the couch doing nothing, and I finally disconnected from the world, I guess. And yeah, that's when it just got worse.
Let's talk quantity. How much were we taking during those bad days?
Yeah, so towards the end, and it's a fucking ridiculous amount, and it makes me sick to even think about it. So I ended up finding, so where we were living at the time was in my hometown. So we moved back to my hometown because I felt more comfortable living there once I had bubs. But then we ended up moving into my grandma's house. So with my dad and my mum. So they were living with my grandma at the time. So we moved in with them for about 6 months because we wanted to make the move to like the surf coast of Victoria, and we wanted to save some money up before we did that. So that's when the addiction got really bad because I was back living with my dad. I was back in the house that is trauma, like so much trauma. Yeah, I was back feeling like, and also I had help with that, my daughter as well. So that is where the addiction really, really, really was at its highest. And I had made a friend in that area that sold them as well and knew people that would sell them so that if I ever did run out or go through withdrawals, one phone call, hey, can you get me this amount? So I was taking so I'd get prescribed about every 4 days from this dodgy doctor. So I found a dodgy doctor as well in that area. Every 4 days I would get a 20 milligram box, so two 20 milligram boxes, and that was a quantity of 20, and a 10 milligram box of 20 of those. And they were gone within a day and a half. So I do not know how I would say, so that's like I would take about 30 tablets a day of that. So a mix of 20s and 10s. And then when I would run out, I'd buy it got to the point I was spending about $1,200 a week on the addiction.
I want to talk about going back to your childhood home and being triggered because you're now raising your daughter in sort of the same environment that you were. How was this time different with your daughter? Like, how did you protect her from that? Or did you not? Were you just a bit too drugged up and high, which you were doing that to survive, I understand. But how was this time different?
Yeah. So it got to the point where I was such a functional addict that it was only at nighttime you could really see that I was affected. And at that point she'd gone to bed but even by affected, I would say I was laying on the couch and just you could see it in my face and my eyes. And that's what my family, as I got sober would tell me, it was your face. We could see it in your face. But going back to my childhood house and living not only there but with my dad again, and then having my daughter there, and because he was an addict as well growing up, he I should have mentioned it before as well, but a lot of my childhood memories come from this house that we used to go to, which was my godparents' house at the time. And they were actually drug dealers, and I didn't know until I got older that my parents were actually taking ecstasy. And I would have from about 4 years old until I was about 12 or maybe 11. And then I've got my younger sister who was there as well, and she's 18 months younger than me. And my older sister as well, who's 8 years older than me and 10 years older than my younger sister, would come, and she would protect us. Me and my older sister would protect us. And we would always be crying for mum and dad, but they were so off their heads that they didn't give us the comfort that we needed, and the craving of take us back to bed, and can you come to bed with us? We were so little and so young that we just wanted our parents, and they would be go to bed, go to bed. I just remember it I thought it was so normal. And that went on every weekend, for years. And then at home I remember the first time I smelled weed when I was in year 8, and I had a That's So Raven moment where the eye, and it was that's what I've been smelling my whole life. It's not dad having cigarettes in the toilet. He was smoking weed. So I've also grown up with an addict as well my whole life. So going back to that house, it made me, when I was in the depth of the addiction, it actually made me realize I'm turning into my dad. I am him. I'm literally him. It's my whole life, I didn't want to be him. He was the opposite of what I wanted to be. So that's where I felt like I'd failed a lot in life. And there wasn't even a point at that time where I thought I was going to get help. It was I was going to die from this. And my daughter deserved a better life without me in it. It's
Mm.
just constant. You try so hard. And I remember like going back to even the dodgy doctor and being like, okay, I want to get off this now. Like, stop, put the brakes on. I want to get off this, please. Like, I can't do it anymore. If I do, I'm going to kill myself. I can't do it anymore because I would try to stop, and the withdrawals was something else. It was like how people describe heroin withdrawals is exactly what I was going through. I was so sick, and I couldn't function. And I remember so many times mum coming into my room and holding my daughter and just looking at me like, what do I do? What the fuck do I do? And she would keep taking me back to this doctor. And I was like, it's all right, mum, this will be the time. And I knew it wasn't. I knew I was going in there just to get, my scripts and pop more. And it was so shameful, but I felt like I didn't have time to withdraw as a mum. I didn't have the time, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And I was like, my parents are watching me struggle. Like, why aren't they suggesting like giving me like 2 weeks and being like, okay, Tash, we're gonna give you 2 weeks to go and do what you need to do, and we'll take care of it, your daughter and what needs to go on. And I just thought that wasn't possible for me. So I was, yeah, I thought that I would be on it forever because of the withdrawals. I couldn't stop. I couldn't.
You have
Absolutely.
shook my core. In this privileged state that I sit here today, I didn't realize how much of a luxury it was to be able to detox and to get sober and to withdraw. Honestly, Tash, I have never thought about it that way. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, God, I would have gotten off Oxy. I don't even know if I would have fallen into that deep. I know I wouldn't have fallen into that deep of addiction if I had the time to withdraw and have the time to get the help that I needed. But I didn't have the time. I was a mum. She's my whole world, and she always has been. And that's one thing that I'm so thankful that I was a functional, addict. Her needs always came before mine, no matter what, money, whatever it was, she was my priority and always will be. And yeah, I didn't have time to go sit in a detox for 2 weeks. I couldn't. How am I to leave my beautiful one at the time 1 year old daughter with who? With my partner who's living at my family's house? How uncomfortable for him. He's got to work every day. And then my mum like put that weight on her. Like, that's my child. I need to be like, that's I made the decision to have her. I should be able to, I also
Mm.
took those tablets. I got addicted. Like, I need to deal with this. I can't be asking everyone else, and everyone's going to think I'm weak. Everyone's going to think I'm a horrible mother. Everyone's going to think I don't love her because I can so easily go away into a detox and just pretend like that's not even my life. Like, so many things was running through my head, and just so much. I was so scared of speaking up because I never wanted to lose her. That was my biggest fear. Um, yeah, I didn't become an addict because I, you know, was taking drugs, buying on the street, and no one's, no, even if you do that and you don't ask for addiction, no one asks for it. It's an awful fucking disease that we have to go through, and I hate that anyone has to ever feel like this. But with accidental addictions, with pharmaceutical medication, there's just a different level of shame I feel to it.
Mm.
Especially as a mum. I was so fucking ashamed and so embarrassed, and I was so scared of losing my daughter. And I was like, but I'm fucking chronically ill. I'm so sick. I'm disabled. Like, I literally, without these, I can't move. I can't get up. And then I finally found, his name's Simon Gordon. He's the most amazing endometriosis surgeon ever. He specializes in endometriosis. So the whole time, that 12 months that I wasn't allowed to have surgery, I was fighting for surgery. I was pushing for it because I knew the moment I was pain-free, oxys were out of my life. I was so over it. I knew that I could do it. So I worked so hard doctors, so many other doctors, no, you've had surgery 10 months ago, we're not doing it. No, you're only stage 2, you wouldn't have grown back that fast. Like, so many other aspects to just not even just the addiction, to my health, that like doctors went, I couldn't make them believe me. And I'm like, look at the amount of painkillers I am taking. Like, yes, they make me feel good, but why did I start there in the first place? I was in agony every single day. And I knew that if I wasn't in pain anymore, I could go and get the help I needed. And I had at that time spoken to my family and finally opened up and said, all right, I will try and get clean after this surgery. If I can't, you guys can put me in detox. And I just surrendered to that. I finally surrendered. And because I knew my family finally was supportive, and they were like, why did you not tell us this amount earlier? Why did you not think that we'd be there for you? Why did you not? And it's just because I just didn't know. I just didn't know. It was, yeah. So when I finally got that surgery with Simon, he found stage 4, and to this day, it's one of his worst cases that he's ever seen. He actually has put it in his book to educate other doctors with my case, and it ended up going for 5 hours. Wow. They found it in my like lung and like my chest cavity. They found it everywhere. My bowel was fused like to my ovaries, just everywhere. And I remember waking up and him coming to me and him showing me that he's going to put this in his book to educate other doctors. I spun out. I was like, because for a long time I was questioning even my own pain. I was like, am I taking this because I'm in pain? Or am I taking these because I'm an addict? You know, and I knew obviously at that point I was addicted. Whether I liked it or not, my body was dependent. I was going to have to go get help either way. But it also validated a lot of my mental as well, because I knew my body. I knew where I started. I knew that I was in so much pain. So it was very validating to have that surgery. And then after that, I did try to detox with my family and their support by them taking control of my medication, stop buying them on the street, and just taking like what my doctor gave me. But the withdrawals were just too much. And I failed every single time. And we probably tried 3 times. And at that point, I had moved into the new house as well, me, my partner at the time, and my child. So, and my mum had moved with my sister, and my sister was living in this area as well. So I had all the support. I had no excuse anymore at that point. I was pain-free, which was insane. I still pretty much am, and I had the surgery, I was in February last year, so still pain-free, which is amazing. And yeah, so I had no other reason. I found my doctor, who's still my doctor to this day, who is amazing. He is like, to try and trust the medical system again after feeling like they failed me so deeply was a massive thing. But my doctor is amazing. He's so great. He's literally like a dad. I love him so much.
We'll put him in the show notes. Give him a shout out.
Literally, like, Jim, if you're hearing this, you're the best. I love him so much. I seen him this morning and I was like, I'm going on a podcast. He's like, I'm so fucking proud of you.
Oh, that's so special.
He's just so amazing. But yeah, so I was like, I'm not going to a public detox. That's not happening. And so he found me a private one here. Luckily, I had the right insurance as well because of all my endometriosis surgeries. I had only had private health insurance for like a year, and I don't have it anymore. But it just all worked out, and it was like it was like meant to be at that point. You know what I mean? I just had to pay my excess, and I was in detox. So within, I think it was 2 days that I had said I wanted to go in, I was in detox.
Wow. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
That's so lucky.
Yeah, I was extremely lucky. It was over like the Easter period as well. So unfortunately I missed Easter with my little one, but they did give me like 8 hours leave that day. So I was able to spend the day with her. So it was beautiful. But yeah, I landed in detox, and that was a experience and a half.
Yeah, how long were you in detox for?
I was in detox for 10 days. So felt like a lifetime when I was in there, but now reflecting on it, like I could have stayed longer, and probably should have maybe done as well the 3 months after that. But again, being a mum, I couldn't do it to my little one, and I knew that I would be okay after it. Have I struggled, since then? Absolutely, but and I know that I wouldn't have struggled as I am now. Like as we speak, I'm also coming off Valium, which is another drug that was overprescribed to me. And but because I did learn so much in detox, and I have such a great GP, we're just slowly reducing it until I get off it. And yeah, I've got a lot of resources from being in detox, but detox I remember the first day, it was just so scary.
Can you go through, if you feel comfortable? I want to know what happens. You wake, you open your eyes, then what happens?
So, like the day of detox, yeah. So I remember I've packed all my stuff and we're getting ready to go. And my partner had work that day, so I said goodbye to him like that night before, and he gave me a kiss on the forehead in the morning. And it was just me and my daughter, and my mum was taking me. And I remember I filmed a video on my phone, which I still have, and I was bawling my eyes out, and I said, if you ever touch one of these things again, like an oxy, I'm going to fucking kill you myself, Natasha. This is for future you. Don't you ever do this again. And I didn't have much grace on myself, if I'm honest. I hated me for doing it to myself. But now that I look back on it, I slipped through the system of the medical system. I was failed by them. I really was. And, a lot, I take responsibility for what I did and, what I took and how much I brought, off the street. But I would never have been there if I got the right support that first time they prescribed me, endone. So I landed in detox, and as soon as I got there, they started going through my bags, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm a mum trying to get fucking help. Like, I'm not this drug addict crazy person. Like, even I had the idea of what a drug addict.
Like, I'm not a drug addict. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not one of them. Like, what are those? I'm not one of them. And everyone that was there as well at detox, like, no one had the same story that I did. So they were either there for like heroin, or there was a girl that was there for GHB withdrawals, which I didn't even know you could withdraw off that drug. There was a guy next to me who was coming off alcohol, and he was very sick, very, very sick. And he was next to me, so I heard him vomiting all day and all night, and some other things, but obviously just not nice things, which I thought would be my experience withdrawing. I thought I was going to be entering in there and I was going to be literally vomiting, shitting my pants, everything. I thought I would be hard draw withdrawing. But that's when I was introduced to something called Suboxone. And that's an opioid replacement therapy that they give to heroin addicts. Yeah, it was a shock to the system, to say the least. But the more I got to know all of them, I realized they're exactly like me. They all have a story. They all have the same story. And we all landed there because it made us feel not alone anymore. It made us feel safe. It was, it made us feel like we weren't black sheep of our families. And it's the one thing that all connected us is the fact that we all were just alone, really.
The wound is still the same. Hey, everyone I talk to, regardless of our addictions or the spectrum of them, the wound is always the same.
It's always the same. And that's when I realized I am an addict. I am a drug addict, and that's what I was. And I'm not afraid to say it anymore. I held so much shame to it for a very long time, and now I'm proud of myself to come out and say that I was a drug addict and I'm in recovery and I got the help that I needed. And I want to help others do the same. I want them to notice their behaviors and, go to recovery and live the best life they can, because now I am so fucking happy. I've never been so happy in my life. I am, now even going through the breakup and leaving a 5-year relationship and being a single mum, I'm still now living the literal best life, and I'm high on life. And my mum used to say that to me, like, be high on life, you can do this. I'm like, fuck off, what does that fucking mean, mum? Like, take an oxy. You don't know what this high is.
Yeah.
And now, like, I just got back from Newcastle. I met Alex.
Love Alex. You know, he's like started this whole thing. I love Alex. Yeah, go on.
He made me post that video that I posted. It was because of him.
Wow.
He made me feel like I had potential and that I could do this and I could help others with my story. And that because he told me, you know, he gets so many messages from women and, you know, how can he help women if he's not one? He's like, Tash, you can do it. And because I already have, you know, the platform from influencing, I was like, yeah, fuck it. I can do this. I can do this for sure. And if it wasn't for Alex, and it's so funny, I went to Newcastle. I was meant to do a shoot, just a photo shoot, and go to Sydney. And I wasn't even meant to meet Alex. But my friend ended up cancelling on me. And I stayed in Newcastle for another day. And then that's how me and Alex connected. We'd already followed each other for a very long time and messaged and supported each other through my oxy addiction and things like that. And so, yeah, I wasn't even meant to meet him. And the fact that we met and he inspired me so greatly to post that video and he made me feel like I could do it, I will forever be grateful for him. Like, he is such an inspiring man and I'm so proud of his journey and all the work he's doing. And yeah, I just can't believe that I only posted the video 4 days ago and I'm already here with you as well. And I can't wait to see, you know, what my story does for other people. And yeah, and going back on Detox as well, being prescribed as well something called Suboxone, it just goes to show the level of my addiction and how much I was taking, because I was put on a dose that was like pretty much like methadone. So what heroin addicts take, I was pretty much I was taking the equivalent that would make you feel like you've just shot up heroin.
I'm going to start wrapping up the interview, but completely agree that everyone needs to hear your story, Tash, and that Alex is a fucking legend.
Fucking legend.
I want to know, why is it so important for you that your daughter has a sober mum?
Because I just, sober Natasha has so much I want to live. I'm so driven. I just love helping people. My dream job is to be a paramedic. I start studying in July.
Wow, how beautiful.
I'm so excited. It's been my dream job since I could remember. And my daughter, yeah, she deserves to see a mum that just thrives in life and is happy, and I don't need to be this sad shell of a version of myself anymore, and I don't need to be a victim anymore to this addiction. I can be, you know, I can be me again when I'm sober, and it's so special because I'm a good person, and when I'm sober I get shit done, and I want her to see that she can do the same. She can be driven and motivated, and she can go through life and have struggles and still come out on top no matter what. And I will always be there to support her and make sure that she has the best life possible, and that she never, ever, ever has to grow up the way I grew up. That is my number one thing. I never want her to ever feel the trauma that I still have to carry to this day and fight those demons every single day. I will do anything, and literally anything, to protect her from what I grew up with.
Tash, you did so well for your first podcast ever. I feel so grateful. And thank you so much for coming on Soberly Speaking.
Oh, anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Soberly Speaking. We are now dropping episodes every Mondays and Thursdays. You can catch the Monday interviews, the full episodes, on YouTube at Soberly Speaking. We are also on TikTok, on Instagram. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, hit that follow button to stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Oh, my love.